welcome to licensing subcommittee. I just need some points from the protocol. When speaking on the chair, if you wish to speak, please raise your hand and direct all communications via the chair. Please ensure that mics are muted when you are not speaking, apart from the chair. You do not need to mute their mic at any stage. When speaking, be succinct and do not exceed the allocated timeframes. If you're referring to a specific page or picture in a report, refer to the page number. If you are having technical difficulties, please use the chat function in Google Meet to alert the meeting. Please do not use the chat function for putting formal questions to the subcommittee. Any persistent disruptive behaviour will result in removal from the meeting. Thank you. Please could I ask the subcommittee to appoint a chair?
I'd like to nominate Councillor Plouvier.
Thank you, Councillor Bell. Thank you. Right. Okay. Let's start with apologies, which I think we have none of.
There are no apologies, Chair.
Lovely. So this hearing will be held, decided by myself, Councillor Plouvier, and my colleague, Councillor Bell. Perhaps we ought to just go around and check who else is here. We have Peter Gray, who's the governance officer. We have David Tuitt, the senior licensing officer. We have Dave Atkins from the police. We have Amanda North, who's our licensing legal officer. And then we have Priya Patel, I believe, who's appearing for the first premises on the agenda. And Mr. Yavuz, is that correct? Am I spelling that correctly? Thank you. Who's appearing for the second premises. So if everybody's happy with my having introduced everybody, we'll go on. Just very quickly, declarations of interest. I don't have any. Councillor Bell, you don't have any either. Thank you for that. The hearing procedure for both these TENS matters, their applications of TENSs which have been objected to by the police in both cases. So in the hearing procedure, the licensing officer will outline, first of all, the case, the matter we're hearing. Then the police will outline their position, and then the premises who applied for the TENS will outline theirs. There's then time for us to have a discussion through the chair, questions through the chair, rather than speaking to each other directly, please. And then there's an opportunity for people to have a final word before we finish the item. We'll then, because we're online, we don't make the decision after each item, we make the decision at the end of the meeting. So I think if everybody's happy and understands that, please indicate to me by raising your hand if you want to ask questions. Yeah, we'll hear now on the 10 for Great Eastern Street, and we could perhaps go over to Dave Atkins, please. First of all, I want to get the outline from the licensing officer.
Thank you, Chair. Members are asked to consider a temporary event notice which has been given in respect of the premises known as Patel and Sons, which is at 101 Great Eastern Street. The temporary event notice is for a period from the 26th of December to the 1st of January for activities up to 4 AM, from 8 to 4 AM on each of those days. We've received an objection from the police, which is the reason for the hearing this afternoon. Thank you, Chair.
Thanks, Mr. Tuitt. Okay, over to you, Dave Atkins from the police, if we could hear your objections.
Yes, Chair, hello. So it's actually PC Neil Hunwick. I'm just using Dave Atkins'
I'm
computer.
so sorry.
No, that's cool. That's fine. I spoke to Peter earlier on. Yeah, no. Basically, we've received this 10 submission for an extension for alcohol from midnight till 4 a.m. We have experienced throughout this COVID problem extensive street drinking in various areas in Hackney, which has caused antisocial behaviour, public urination, in addition to large crowds gathering and mingling against the advice and the regulations under the COVID legislation. Our submission is very simple. New Year's Eve and the period between Christmas, etc. We've now been placed in Tier 3, which all pubs and bars are now being forced to close unless they are selling takeaway food, etc. We don't believe that there should be any premises having their hours extended, providing additional alcohol. There's no parties to be had over the New Year period, because households are not allowed to mingle, with the exception, obviously, of the Christmas exception. So we don't believe that alcohol should be made any more readily available. We only believe that this will lead to an increase in street drinking. And with regards to this particular premises, there is an area of pedestrianisation only a few shops down, with steps, etc., and believe that there is plenty of provision for alcohol. If people can't plan ahead and get their alcohol in, bearing in mind they're not supposed to be out, then having somewhere open till 4 a.m. is only going to put the temptation for people to drink in the streets in the nearby areas. And that is our submission. It will increase antisocial behaviour, street urination, and will potentially cause people to gather and mingle, which should be discouraged in the current COVID crisis that we find ourselves in.
Thank you, P.C. Hanwick. Thank you very much for that. Councillor Bell, do we have any points of clarification?
I think you touched on it, but just to confirm, is this area a hotspot for street drinking in associated ASB?
Yeah, the Old Street and Great Eastern Street areas have always been a bit of a hotspot. Obviously, that has been partially fuelled by the bars and the clubs, and people then continuing on purchasing alcohol from the off licences. But obviously, without the bars and the clubs operating, we can't see why anybody would even be out on the streets looking for alcohol at 4 a.m. in the morning. The only reason to be out on the streets at 4 a.m. looking for alcohol would be if you're going to consume it in the street.
Okay.
Yes, that's okay.
Thanks. Thank you. Okay. Thanks very much. In that case, we'll go over to the premises concerned, and Ms. Patel, I think if you would like to give your reasons.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can I deal with these submissions that have just been made by the officer, perhaps? It might be a little easier as you've just heard them. And of course, all the criteria have been taken into account before making the application, the licensing objectives. And one of the things that my client has informed me yesterday is that he has in fact secured a private security guard from midnight onwards till 4 a.m. And 3 members of staff which will be at the premises. Now, what I do outline is this. Of course, we take into account the objectives and the matters raised, but they are speculative matters. They, of course, this shop sits on the very border of the SSP, so it's not in the heart of the SSP, literally a road away from when it finishes. So that's the first point I raise. The second point I raise that although I accept the officers making observations that there is street drinking in Hackney, there has been no incidents, actual incidents, which have been highlighted or brought forward in evidence. And I do ask you to bear that in mind, because one can make a submission that there is a lot of street drinking in Hackney and Shoreditch, but to make that assertion, it would have been appropriate to have examples. This is a premises which has had a variation in a license about a year ago. There has been no incidents. There has been no police called outside the premises. Further, there are 2 other premises that have closed around the area. There is a restaurant next door which does have a license up until that time. And so when taking into account those factors, which are actual evidential factors of no incidents taking place, I think that the balance can be struck with an extra security guard. This is a shop that doesn't just serve alcohol, it serves food. It's a convenience store, so it's got groceries and food and other matters as well. And so taking into account the fact that, and of course I do understand, but this is a current fact and it's a live factor, that a lot of businesses have suffered. And there has to be, in my submission, a balance between the licensing objectives, which of course are important, but also the fact that businesses are struggling to the extreme. And they do need some leeway and help in order to make some money to be able to keep the businesses viable. And that is the reason for this application. One of the main reasons is to be able to recoup some of the losses they've incurred through no one's fault. And they have been suffering. Now, of course, the position is that the tier rules are there. If people decide to break them, that's not as a result of the shop being open. That's the result of them being out. There are no clubs. There are no bars open nearby to make the situation worse, as is submitted, because often the submission was that people are coming outside of the bar and people are coming outside and then buying alcohol. This is not going to be the case in the circumstances of this 10. This shop is going to be open purely for convenience at a time when it's extremely difficult for businesses, but at the same time, it's incurring extra cost and employing the extra security guard. So those are my submissions. There has been no incidents, no reports, no direct evidence to show that this has caused extra problems. In particular, this premises had the license increased in a year, so they've now had the experience, and in that whole year, there's been not a single arrest or police being called to the premises. There is a sufficient signage up, and there is a sufficient amount of staff. The alternative consideration for the committee and the chair is this: that should you feel that the period of time is too long, then my client has asked for a shorter period, for a period of 3 to 4 days. And as I said, there is also a hatch, which means that the premises would be closed and the security guard would stand outside and they could serve any groceries or any alcohol from the hatch itself. So there are those options. And whilst my final submission would be, of course, I don't disrespect what the police are raising and are concerned about, but I think in the circumstances of the case, they're not made out as if the normal situation would be. And in my submission, they're not as exaggerated. This is tier 3. People ought to be in, and if people are out there, that's a separate offence in itself. And I don't think a shop being open is going to exaggerate that situation. Can I clarify further?
Sorry, yes?
Can I clarify anything that I've said, or would you like any further information?
Belle, do you have any points of clarification?
You said he was offering for a shorter period, but which dates were those?
I think from the 26th to the 31st, to the 30th.
And were you offering up the security guard as a condition?
Yes,
on the license?
that would be throughout any period that you would grant. So whether it's the shorter period or the longer period.
All right, I'm not sure how we do that, but we can explore that anyway. I think for the moment, I'm happy to leave that and get into discussion.
Yes, I mean, the application, forgive me, I spoke over you. The application is for the 26th to the 1st. The security guard is going to be employed for that period, should it be granted. If a shorter period is granted by the committee, then any of the shorter period days, the security guard would be employed. So regardless, that would be a condition that would be offered.
My most obvious question is, who is your client's target audience during this period?
There are local residents that do live around, and mainly during the day, it used to be people who used to work in the area that used to come to the shop. But mainly in the evenings, it's residents that are in and around the area. And in particular, this time, there are no other entertainment premises open for other people to be around.
I guess the question is whether or not we believe that,
Well, the
or
only
whether or not it's going to try to attract passing drinkers who are frustrated not getting into bars and clubs and decide instead to buy a few cans and have a party on the street.
The only submission I make in relation to that is because of Tier 3 being imposed already, people know nothing is open in the area as of yesterday. And so I go to the area to expect any bars or clubs to be open because of restrictions in place already.
Okay.
I'm guessing it's whether or not I believe that will be effective, or whether some people will, even if they're utterly deluded, will go still to Shoreditch expecting a party night and get the closest they can get to it by having a few cans on the pavement outside of your client's premises.
Of course, I appreciate that, but can I say this, that the particular premises are very close to the roundabout, in a very quiet, in a complete an area. It's not in where the other part comes up. It is literally, when you walk from the station down the side of the street, it's not one of those areas which is heavily populated by the bars. And of course, we can respectfully speculate all sorts of situations. I can only submit evidentially what's in front of me, and I'd ask you to take that into account of the actual. Of course, I can raise speculations, so can the police and so can the committee, but the evidence before at the moment, and the strongest evidence, is that even in normal times, when all the bars have been open, there hasn't been a single incident that has reported or the police being called outside this shop. They have managed their license very well. And in my submission, that's strong evidence, actually speculative evidence.
Okay.
Does that answer the question? I hope it does, but I'm happy to elaborate on anything.
Yeah. Is that okay, Councillor Bell?
It's a form of answer. I'm not sure I'm convinced by it, but
okay.
It's a form of answer.
Can I ask, please, just with reference to where the shop is, the triangle at the top of, I think it's Leonard Street, is a local open space where people do gather outside to drink. Is that visible from the shop?
I'm not familiar. I'm not from the area, so I do apologise. I've got a map.
I think it's not.
Can I describe how I know to describe where it is from you, and then that might be easier. When you come out, when you have the station, the roundabout, if you go right, behind you is the shop. So if you go right, you would go towards Moorfields. If you go straight, it goes towards Farringdon, I believe. But if you go the other way, that's as you go up towards Old Street, the road forks off.
Yeah, Great Eastern Street forks to the right.
Yes,
yeah.
Just before the fork, about 3 shops up is where.
Right.
There is a map. There is a map in the report.
Yeah.
The last page of.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just didn't realise them all.
So I think the answer to the question is actually no, because it's on the same side, and I think the triangle is slightly further down Great Eastern
Yes, it
Street.
is. Yeah.
So it's not visible from the shop. Okay.
And to be honest, where it says cycle way, where that is, that the triangle you're referring to, that area?
It's the open space further down Great Eastern Street on the right.
Where it says Memorial?
Yeah.
If you stood outside the shop, you couldn't see that area now.
No. Okay. Okay. I think we're sort of open for points through the chair in the discussion phase now. We've heard from both parties. I don't know, Brian, do you have particular questions for either party? I can't.
I guess it's not about points of detail. It's whether or not we believe this will not exacerbate the problems in the area.
Can I then ask the police officer? The premises have said that there isn't an issue with street drinkers because all the bars and clubs are closed. Could I just ask you if you have any comments to make on that?
Yeah, Chair. There is an issue with street drinking. It's a problem that's borough-wide. The bars and the clubs are still at liberty to sell off sales, which they have been affected by closures, etc. So they're all finding new and exciting ways of stretching the boundaries of what they can get away with. So they will be, although not the actual premises are closed, they will be selling some off sales. The problem is that when they do close, then it's going to turn to any off licenses open, because people will be out and they will be encouraged to carry on drinking in the street. There is a problem with street drinking throughout Hackney, and certainly in the Great Eastern and Old Street areas. It is in the special policy area. It's almost like the original SPA. So there is a problem, and we believe that an off licence being open to 4 a.m. will be a shining beacon for people to congregate around, purchase their alcohol, and then sit in the surrounding streets. I appreciate what they've said about security guard, but security guard can only deal with the premises. And as you quite rightly pointed out, you can't even see the area we're referring to from the front of the shop. And there's limits to how far you can, unless you're a police officer, you can go chasing off down the street to deal with antisocial behaviour issues that may be emanating from that alcohol sale.
Am I right in thinking that there are fast food premises at both ends of the parade of shops we're talking about?
There is, and there's fast food shops opposite. There's kebab shops. It's directly, as you might be aware, it's directly opposite the fire station.
And I know there's a late night fish and chips place right at the eastern end of the parade of shops.
I think it's
shop at the western end of the parade of shops.
Yeah, I think it's that's got 5 a.m. So I mean, it's sort of like the Holy Trinity, but not being a Trinity, so to speak. You've got the alcohol available and you've got food available. People are going to be, they're going to want to try and celebrate New Year's Eve. I get that, but unfortunately, they're going to be doing it in the street.
Okay, Councillor Bell, do we have any more questions? I don't have any more questions.
Can I make one point about the point raised about New Year's Eve, if that's permitted? As I said, if the committee feel that that's a hotspot day, effectively, then we have asked for a shorter period. So the 31st wouldn't be taken into account. I think I said the 26th to the 30th.
Okay, that's noted.
My submission might be a way of balancing those concerns.
Okay. Okay.
I mean, I don't think it's really a question of balancing. It's a question of setting a precedent within the SPA, of letting it open later on nights where we know there's likely to be problems.
I appreciate that. I think
Not just that one night, it is a whole range of them.
Yes. I appreciate that. I think I was just referring to the particular point made about New Year's Eve. And so it doesn't.
I mean, I've made New Year's Eve as one example, but it is any night that the alcohol is going to be available.
And the only submission I make in terms of fairness to businesses is that the premises that are two doors away have a 5 a.m. license as well, and so there has to be some fairness in the way the licensing decisions are made and the policies that are given. There are others that have been given those licenses.
That's a valiant point, but of course the special policy area drives a bus through that.
No, of course.
One thing we don't do is say there are lots there, therefore we can have more. No, but I understand your point.
Certainly not making that point. I just an outer point, and that's why I didn't make it as part of my main submissions. But of course, there has to be an element of fairness in this that are made. So that's the only issue I raise.
Okay.
On fairness, we don't try and fix it through tens. That's not the right way.
Well, okay.
I'm not suggesting that it is. What I'm saying that is it's been raised, and as I said, it's not a main limb of my points. And there is a proper license application, as I'm sure the licensing in place, which is much more fuller with all the information on it. But just to be fair, I raise it only for the reason of, not as a main point, as a side point.
Okay.
Okay. I think we've moved to the point where we've probably heard as much as we can on this. I will go back to both parties to ask if you wish to sum up. Ms. Patel, do you wish to sum up?
Not really, unless you want to hear the points again. I think I've been quite thorough, and I think, you know, unless anybody wants me to make a particular point again or clarify anything, the submissions stand as made when I made them.
Thank you. PC Hanswick, do you want to have a final summation?
No, Chair. I would just add that from a business point of view, off licences have been allowed to open right through the tiers, lockdowns, whatever. So I feel that they're, from a business case, I think that sort of dilutes it somewhat, given that they haven't actually had to close. So to state they need longer hours in order to make up a loss of income does seem somewhat awry. But with regards to the remaining points, I think we've covered them.
Well, as that's a new point, can I comment on that? Because that's not.
I was going to say that
Yeah.
is a new point, and I don't want to have comments on it. I just wanted to say in response to that both myself and Councillor Benn are very well aware of that. The point didn't need making, and I don't propose to go into that any further.
No,
That's okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you very much, Ms. Patel.
Thank you very much.
We'll now move on to the next item on the agenda, which is the 10 application, or rather, objection to the 10 application for Dalston Lane.
Madam Chair, may I then disconnect? I don't need
Yes,
to be
absolutely. Yes, apologies. We
Yes.
make the decisions at the end. We get everybody to go out, and then the decision will be forwarded to you, if
Thank
that's
you
okay.
Thank you
Okay.
very much, committee. and
Thank you.
Madam Chair. Thanks.
Okay, so I'm going over to item 6, Dalston Lane. Can I ask the licensing officer to outline the report, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. So this is another temporary event notice, similar to the previous item, for an event period which is on the 1st of January 2021 from 1 AM to 4 AM at the premises at 25 Dalston Lane. This temporary event notice has also been objected to by the police, hence the referral to subcommittee for determination as to whether or not to issue a counter notice. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Tewitt. That's very clear. No, nothing to add to that. Brilliant. Okay, in that case then over to you again, PC Hanswick, for your objections.
Yes, Chair. Pretty much exactly as what I've just submitted on the previous 10. On this particular occasion, the area of concern is the Dalston Square, which is a very large, new, pedestrianised area, which is directly opposite this particular venue. For the same reasons as the previous submission, we've got a temporary event notice that's been submitted effectively for New Year's Eve, but it's obviously running from their existing licence period into 4 AM on New Year's Day. We're in, again, on the verge of the Dalston Spa. Again, the same situation will arise where there will be undoubtedly bars and clubs selling off sales up to midnight. And then you've got an off licence that is put on until 4 AM in the morning, which will facilitate people's continued drinking in the street, most notably in the Dalston Square area, which is almost exclusively surrounded by high-rise flats. And obviously the sound will reverberate through right up and obviously disrupt everybody's sleep. You've also got the antisocial behaviour of street urination, etc. And for the same reasons as the previous 10, we object on the basis of the crime and ASB matters that could be caused.
Thank you, PC Hanswick. Councillor Bella, any points of clarification?
No, thanks. I think I understand.
Okay, not for me either. So over to you then, Mr. Yavuz, for your application support. You're on mute. You need to unmute yourself because we can't hear you.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm the owner of Junction Supermarket at Dalston Lane. So I've been there 5 years, and I've worked there every night. For the last 5 years, I've been working there every night. So me and my sister ran our business, and we've got 2 staff that run it with us. Me and my sister are both license holders, and we've been in the same area for the last 6 years. So I've built a client base where I know my customers. So we don't just, one thing we don't do is just serve strong alcohol. So we don't want to get the drunk people into from the streets into the shop, which that's the customers that we don't want. The alcohols that we sell is just more high-end stuff. So we make sure that we don't serve anyone that's already drunk or on the influence of alcohol, because we've got respect for our neighbours, for the large flats across the road to us. The pubs next to the shop is already closed, has been closed. It was only open for 2 weeks. The hotel will be closed. So what the police is referring to as the street drinkers, they're not going to be there. I mean, I've been there 5 years, and I've dealt with the busiest situation in the area. I've never had a problem with anyone urinating in front of my shop or next to the shop or around the area. We make sure that no one leaves bottles outside the shop. So one thing we don't make sure is having groups outside the shop. So we tell them to keep it moving. We don't have large groups of people come into our shop because of the COVID. So we make sure everyone wears a mask in the shop because we're taking it serious due to COVID. I mean, I've been there for 6-7 years, and that 6 years, and I know my client base very well. I don't see us being open at 4 o'clock is gonna cause a problem in the area, because we've got no bars and clubs that's open next to our shop at the moment. Is there anything you can ask me that I can answer, maybe?
Councillor Bell, do we have?
Mr. Yildiz, I don't know if you heard the point I made previously.
Yeah.
Which is that even if bars and clubs are officially closed, some people will be out and attempting to party in the locations where they normally go, and Dalston, like Shoreditch, is one of those places where they normally go.
Yeah.
And the problem is, however much I might take your promises to serve certain people only seriously, once they cross the road or even outside of your premises, you have absolutely no control over them or what they do.
Mm-hmm.
And can you not see how that might cause a problem, however good your efforts are?
That's a good point you've made. That can be a problem. I'm not going to say it's not going to be a problem, but having been there for so long time, I mean, we're a family business, so we don't have that kind of crowd coming into our shop.
I think I sat on your application before for an extension, and you went through some of that.
Yeah, you did. Yeah. I mean, we've got no problems in the area. We've never had a problem in our store or outside our shop, because we take our licenses very serious. I mean, on a Friday, I'm open to 3 o'clock anyway, every day. I mean, Fridays and Saturdays, we're open at 3 o'clock. It's just unlucky that the New Year's Eve falls into a Thursday.
Okay. Right. I think we're sort of in the discussion phase now. If either of the applicants wishes to ask a question or answer any of the points through me. Councillor Bell, if you have questions further, or
Not really.
sure
I think
there's
I
a lot more
understand
to
the
say,
position.
is there?
No, I think I understand the position.
PC Hanswick, perhaps you'd just like to comment back about, you specified Dalston Square. Has there been issues there during the COVID period while things have been? Is this an area to be watched?
Yeah, it's a residential area. I mean, we've got Gillette Square just around the corner. We've got Dalston Square directly opposite. There's plenty of places. I mean, historically, you've got issues with antisocial behaviour, and that's really our submission.
Yeah, there's not. Yeah, that's fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, I think we've probably got the picture. We're dealing with New Year's Eve, which is New Year's Eve. Basically, people tend to have one reason and one reason only for buying alcohol on New Year's Eve, and it tends to be to do with getting together with other people, legitimately or illegitimately.
Just to add, we've got a lot of local customers that will be coming in, so it's not just going to be people coming off the streets and buying outside.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're concentrating on people that are across the road, the locals.
Absolutely. And what time will you be open to on that Thursday night if we don't grant you this license?
1 o'clock.
1 o'clock.
Yeah, 1 a.m.
Okay.
So I'm just asking for another 2 hours extra.
I understand, and it's I think we understand, but the risks are to do with partying in the street, and
I mean, we was open till 4 o'clock. Was it 3 o'clock last year as well? Last New Year's Eve, I put out tens for you.
of course.
We had no problem.
No, of course. I mean, you know, that's understandable. Okay. Oops. Oh gosh, I've just lost everybody on my computer. That's fine.
Chair, sorry, can I just
Yes.
one last thing? We are specifically talking about this New Year's Eve. I'm not disputing whether people have had trouble last year. We're talking about the specific COVID situation we found, and obviously to dissuade people from gathering in the street.
Yeah.
That is the twist on it this year.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks very much. Do you want to make a final submission, Miss?
Oh yeah. Just to sum it up, I just want to say that I'm aware of the objections that have been made from the council, and we are on top of our game, and we try our best to keep the shop running as professional as possible. And I've got nothing else to say.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Yavuz. Do you wish to add? I think we've probably heard from you, PC Hunswick, but if there's anything you wanted to sum us up with.
One more thing.
Oh, sorry.
I've said.
You're okay.
Yeah.
If it's a problem, if 4 o'clock is a big problem, I'm well happy with 3 o'clock as well. Just
okay.
If that's
Okay.
a big problem.
Okay, that's noted. Thank you, Mr. Yavuz.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Shall I stay or shall I leave there?
I think we're finished. I think we've heard everything we need to hear on this. And so we'll close the public meeting.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you very much for attending. And the committee will meet now after everyone's left.